right, Keith, the news is in. Everton's points deduction has been reduced from 10 points to 6. What are your initial thoughts?
I think slightly disappointed. I've just read the 2-page summary that's come out from the Premier League about the appeal, and Everton had argued 9 points in their appeal, of which 7 have been rejected. The 2 points that they have admitted were wrongly judged initially were that Everton did not act in bad faith; it acted in utmost good faith, which is one very important point and is important for the club's reputation. And secondly, that the sanctions that were already in place in terms of anything that's similar to this were actually judged to be around 6 points. Now, the other 7 points that have been rejected, we've yet to see that detail. And I noticed that the club has also put out a statement saying that they also are waiting to understand the implications of this appeal judgment. And so we may not be finished yet. I think probably the club would err on the side of accepting this and moving forward. But with the fact that we have a second, case coming up on a potential second sanction, there may well be points that have to be clarified from the club's point of view and fought again with the Premier League in order to avoid this second sanction. So I think, to admit that they've made 2 errors on such pretty major things is not really that good for the Premier League. And certainly the time it's taken has been, as I've said on several occasions, has been very disappointing. So it's something, but I don't really, until I know more, it's hard to say exactly how good this really is.
Does it sort of undermine the whole process, Keith? The fact that not all the details have been published, considering, like you've just mentioned, how long it's taken, the fact that not all information is privy to the public, surely that is a concern.
It is a big concern, especially when they've got 2 major points so wrong. And it really needs full transparency, which is what's been desperately lacking from Masters so far. And look, we now know the importance and the impact these sort of things have on what is a very, very important business, not just for the clubs involved, but for the whole country and the fans involved and globally. So we need full transparency, and I think that's a big thing that will come out of this. And it's just not really quite good enough.
What do you make then about the following charge? Are you concerned at all that actually this, I mean, you've just said there, this process effectively could follow into the next one. Does that cause concern actually that given this was 10 points, now it's 6? Are you worried that this process could happen again actually for a second time in the next charge to come potentially?
Yes, I am concerned that could end up. So there could end up being 12 points or 10 points. Who knows what the final total will be? But again, having this whole process hanging like sort of Damocles over people is just wrong just now. There's got to be a quicker way to handle this. There's got to be a better way to handle it. And I'll just say I'm slightly disappointed, but it's mainly the process that's disappointed me, as well as what seems to me some very clear points on the other 7 have been refused. And I really need to understand the legal logic behind that.
And do you think Forest fans should be worried potentially? I mean, now given where your position is in the table, which we can come to in just a minute, if you are deducted, say, another 6 points, they are guaranteed to be below you in the table. Is that actually in one way a bit of a lifeline for Everton?
No, I think it's too early in the season still before anybody can make those sort of judgments. It's only a temporary reprieve. And it was only a few weeks ago everybody was saying Everton were safe now and ahead of the bottom clubs. And, we've been in the relegation zone the last few weeks. So, no, it's a long way to go yet. And the main thing is Everton have got to start winning football matches.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 5 points get a relegation now up to 15th. What do you think the aims for the season now will be? I mean, of course, it's a given it will be aiming or steering clear of relegation. But how far actually do you think Everton could now go?
Well, I think it'll be important to, we know every place is worth another 2 million. So I think it's important to get as far as we can. There is a number of clubs grouped at the bottom of the table. So it's important to get up to 15th, 14th. If you can get around that sort of area, that will certainly help as opposed to the positions we've been in recently.
And if you did have to guess, Keith, I know it might be a bit of a tricky one given how much this has actually changed. How many points do you anticipate the next charge is likely to be?
I really don't know. And say that this whole process has shown that it's not clear, transparent. And so unfortunately, I wouldn't like to say anything, but I'm worried it could be as high as 6 points again. But without knowing the logic behind how they've handled those other 7 arguments just now, then it's hard to say.
And what's the general feeling amongst Evertonians? Are people pleased at least you got some points back, or is there still a bit of concern considering you still are some way down the table?
The initial reactions I've had from friends and other fans has been it's still a major fix from the Premier League. Everybody's really unhappy. They still believe it's been a corrupt system that's judged this. Corruption may be a strong word, but certainly, as I said, it is not transparent, and therefore those accusations fill that vacuum.
Why do they believe it's corrupt? What about this process, aside the length of time, it has been challenging for Evertonians?
Well, I think I'd say it's the whole lack of transparency, which is the key thing. And when you don't have transparency, then other thoughts will fill that vacuum of thought. It's people will always think the worst, particularly when it's their club that's being attacked. And I just think other clubs and other fans should also think that this could happen to them just as easily. And so it's very important that a league that's held in such high esteem as the Premier League should be doing things in a better way.
Does it concern you too, given the length of time this has taken, actually, from the initial charge now to the point reduction and then the second charge to come, that actually, if we take Manchester City's alleged case going on, that could take even longer, given how long this whole process has gone for?
Well, it is already taken longer, as we know, and apparently we've been told it's going to be 25 before the Man City charges are heard, and yet Masters couldn't give us the transparency of when that will be. He's even dodged that question. So it is the length of this process. It makes these charges so much more impactful than just a points deduction, because it's hanging over clubs for many, many weeks, and it means that the punishment does not fit the crime.
And albeit the punishment might not be what you were hoping for, actually, are you relieved in one way, though, Keith, that actually now this whole issue has been resolved and you can then potentially move on to the second charge to come?
Well, as I say, I don't know if it is fully resolved yet. We've got to see if it is. There is another level of legal challenge should the club wish to go there. I would think they would like to see it resolved and accept this at the moment. I would imagine if I was still there, that's what I'd be thinking initially. However, as I say, you've got to think of how this impacts the second charge. And there may have been arguments that we need to go back again and argue again to try and make sure the second charge doesn't come in. It's become such a complex game of legal chess. And we should be more worried about what the scores are on the Saturday and who's putting in goals. That's my biggest concern about the whole thing, is that we're now distracted in legal minefields.
And what's the solution going to be to this, Keith, when we take this charge and potentially the second? Does something need to change for these cases to speed up and to make sure that this process isn't as longed out as it has been?
Well, the profit and sustainability rules have got to change. They've got to be much more realistic. I mean, I do believe that if you buy a football club, then you should be pretty much free to be able to invest what you want to into your asset that you own. In any other business, it wouldn't be a problem. But I think there can be some sort of broader, easier rules that could be imposed that would not lead to breaches and would give clubs like Everton, Wolves, Notts Forest the chances to spend more money. And you see the sort of teams that we're competing against in terms of budget. So I find it so hard to see why a very minor breach like this, results in 10 points when you're playing against clubs that are spending billions like Chelsea have been.
Well, that must be quite demoralising in one way, actually, that as we've spoken about in previous weeks, that actually Everton have been pulled up on this first, despite the fact that we've discussed, of course, in previous weeks, Man City and potentially Chelsea as well. How disappointing now does this feel that you've had a points deduction and now they've been reduced and there's still those cases potentially going on?
Well, again, it's the time that everything's taking, and it will start to impact Forest. They'll feel the same as we have done for a while now. And say it hangs over the mindsets of the players, the management, the staff, the fans, and it starts to eat away at the whole fabric of the club. And it's just something that is an unknown and out of your control. And that's the whole point. Nothing is clear anymore. And that's the biggest issue about this, is there should have been greater transparency.